A dancer dies their first death when they can no longer dance, an artist when they can no longer create, and a musician when they can no longer resonate. BTS portray a very vulnerable and deep fear for all artists who know they're gonna die more than one death. It is an inevitable end, and no one knows when the curtain will begin to close. Hey everybody, I am Helia. I like to paint. I paint portraits, but I also paint things that capture my intrigue. And for the longest time, I mean, since the song was released, Black Swan by BTS has been that song, has been that thing that has caught my intrigue. That song, that music video, the art film, everything somehow changed my view about art and artists. And in summary, it blew my mind. It so beautifully captures the inevitable pain an artist must go through and the fear that it entails. What if the moment we die, our first death is right now? The day we cannot resonate with music, the day we cannot take another step, the day we cannot lift a brush. Throughout the history of literature, mythology, art, and expression, the symbolism of Black Swan has had a lot of meanings and interpretations. So let's talk about a few of them and how they can potentially relate to the song. Not necessarily, but I guess it's my interpretation. So if you vibe with it, thanks. But let's go. And to each their own. In literature, the most famous tale is of the ugly duckling, the rejected, ostracized duck who transformed into this beautiful swan. There is more to the story though. Born different, the little swan had to undertake a lot of physical and verbal abuse from the ducks that were around it. How dare you look different? How dare you not fit the one standard? Sound familiar? Well, the little swan actually tries a lot of different places where it could finally fit, finally belong, after being rejected by the ducks. There is that one point where it takes shelter with a cat and a hen, and they also chase it away. And that is so sad because my cats would never do that. Misrepresentation. No. Anyway, the little birdie decides that they are better off alone as they only have received criticism from everywhere. In solitude is when the transformation happened, as the little one grew into a beautiful black swan. But the thing about living in solitude is that they never realized or saw that they had transformed into something so different than what they were shown that they were. They still believed, because of that they are destined to be desolate. So, one fine day, they decided that they will rather be not living a life which is perceived to be ugly. And that's when they encountered a huge flock of swans, thinking, what better way to die than be killed by a flock of such pretty birds than to live a life of being ugly, perceived ugly. To their surprise, the swans accept them. Puzzled, they are then met with their own reflection and they realize the similarities that they share with the swans. The clarity hit that they did not fit the standard for ducklings because they were never meant to be one. They were always meant to grow into a black swan. I guess that's why representation matters, right? Well, anyway, moving on. The black swan became a symbol of transformation and rebirth of sorts thereon after. However, even prior to that, it has been associated with reincarnation and birth and death in a lot of different cultures. This beautiful bird in some cultures has been a representation of death. For some, it has been of birth, and for some, the reincarnation. So it has really like played the cycle between all of them, the good, the bad, the everything in between. The reason why there was death and birth and reincarnation and rebirth associated to Black Swan was because it was such a rare sight, it was such a rare thing that some people saw like it as that if you were to encounter it, it's bad luck, while others saw it as if you encounter it, it's the best thing and it will bring you good luck and all of that. So let's fast forward it a little and let's come to take a look at psychology. Another thing that BTS confirmed that this song had taken inspiration from Carl Jung's analytical psychology. So let's take a look at that. Carl Jung, an ex-student of Sigmund Freud. Hey, the X is very important here. If you're a psych student or a psychologist, you know. Carl Jung, majorly known for analytical psychology, gave concepts like ego, which is the conscious aspect of personality, functions, the introversion, extroversion, which is also the forming of the infamous MBTI, complexes, which is like pattern of emotion, memories, perception, the personal and collective unconscious, and finally, the archetypes. So he described archetypes as images of these universal experiences contained within the collective unconscious. That means us as humans experience certain things. One of the many archetypes is the shadow. The shadow is that primitive archetype. It contains all our deepest, darkest, sinisterest desires. Call it what you want. But that's not what it holds. Shadow is also really, really important for one's source of creativity, vitality, spontaneity, and emotion, imagination. So Jung said that if our shadow self is suppressed completely, like the entirety of the shadow self is suppressed, it can influence our personality and make it so flat. It can take away our interests, imagination, creation, drive, motivation. It can take away our being that makes us imaginative. So the dilemma is to regulate the shadow of oneself as to not negatively impact what drives us, but also keep in check the things that may bring us down. Why did I talk about this aspect of the shadow self is because a lot of sources say that Black Swan is also a symbol of the shadow self. The shadow self is a part of us that we keep hidden even from ourselves. You know, those demons that we face when we didn't really know that they existed. It is indeed dark and negative and dangerous, and we are afraid to face it. Coming back to the point, it is the biggest fear an artist and dancer or musician has, is to die that death that will take away their identity. That is what they're afraid to face. And it makes so much sense why this Black Swan is used in this song. It is a battle to hold on to what drives us to be an artist, but also the absolute crushing fear of losing it. Beautifully captures that emptiness of the rhythm, the heartbeat. Every time the music resonated, our heartbeat moved along with it. What happens when that familiarity fades away? This line captures the emptiness of the rhythm, of the heartbeat so well. So every time the music resonated with us, every time we were touched by music, I'm talking through the perspective of musicians, like when they listen to a particular flow, a particular beat, and when they are feeling that flow, they're on the instrument or they're writing the music. Something is resonating and their heartbeat is moving so much faster because they're excited. And then what happens when that familiarity fades away? What happens when that sense of self, that excitement, that thrill, it just doesn't exist? And the same goes for the dancers. That what if one day the thrill and the exhilaration, that exhilarating feeling, just can't happen anymore? What if we lose our sense of self? So a lot of creative people hold on to their identity because their creation is a part of them, is an extension of them, is a reflection of themselves. And if it can no longer work, if it can no longer continue to happen the way that it did, it will slowly fade out, or it will feel as if it's slowly fading out of existence. And once identity shattered, what happens when it shatters? It can bring up a feeling of grief and mourning for oneself, that part of the self that no longer lives. And it will also lead to that loss of identity. And there's this big void that was previously filled with such a pleasurable thing. And I genuinely believe that this grief and identity is expressed, this void is expressed in the following lyrics. Killing me now, do you hear me? Holding the 천천히 가라앉아 나 머무린 저 빠져서 방이 바닥난다 모든 순간들이 영원히 돼. Though I try struggling, I'm at the bottom of the sea. Or how some translations put it as, though I try struggling, the surrounding is just the bottom of the sea. The emphasis is so heavy on the grief, in my interpretation and opinion, knowing that my struggles aren't going to pay at all because I'm here in this ocean surrounded by, well, the grief felt for this part of the self that has now gone. They find themselves in this unknown, impeding environment, which is the bottom of the sea. And the time is not continuing to flow that the way it is meant to be. So every second of the struggle, every second of not being able to do what you're meant to do, what you're supposed to do, what you live to do, that struggle, every second, not being able to do is lasting in eternity. It's like a slow pain that keeps on growing. It is capturing that agony, knowing that there's no hope. And honestly, that's so heartbreaking. And a lot of incidents that can happen in someone's life that can create this moment where you lose the ability to do something that you love to do, that you love to create, either music, art, poetry, dance, whatever. That fear is so real and so valid. I personally went through an experience which didn't allow me to dance. And what hurt me the most was that I started to mourn that loss to the point where I was ready to sacrifice anything and everything that it would take for me to just be able to dance again. And because it took so long to get back to movement, for my body to adjust back to being able to make a step, make a flow, I started to believe that that part never existed because I could not revive it, as if it was an illusion. So I cried out with all of my strength. Or I shout with ferocity, like it is in one of the translations. So in the music video, so you probably saw that transition out, and I will get back to my story afterwards. In the music video, this is when Jin turns away from the wall of mirrors that was staring at him. He breaks away from this cage-like space, which could be interpreted as past or shadows. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's my interpretation. And why this was my interpretation is also because that in the art film, this is when the dancer breaks away from the shadows. the other dancers that were, holding him back, shoving him around. And this is the first time that the dancers retaliate and they finally cross that narrow path and they spread their wings as they do that. And this is the part where we reach the transformation. This is the part where we reach that moment of fear, that moment, our demons, that chain is gone. So what happens afterwards? This is where we reach the transformation out of that debilitating fear. And that's it for part 1. So because the video has gone on for a little longer, I decided to make it into 2 parts. And I thought putting it in 2 parts maybe will help in distinguishing between the downfall that we talked about, and we can talk about the transition in the next one, the transformation into the Black Swan. So this is the final painting. Let me know in the comments if you like it. I will make a part 2 where I make a different screenshot, point, reference within the Black Swan music video. And yeah, if you like this video, please drop in the like. Leave a comment if you need to, good or bad, all's good. Share maybe, subscribe if you want. Any and all support is so deeply appreciated. Hope you have an amazing time in your remaining day. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much.